Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So, whenever President Donald Trump was running for office, he promised not to make any cuts to Social Security or touch Social Security. And since getting into office, he's doubled down in making that same promise, and that he's not going to cut Social Security. He's not going to be making any changes to Social Security, but perhaps he should. And in today's video, we're going to be breaking down a big possible change coming to Social Security in 2025, perhaps for the better. And of course, for some Americans, this might actually be for the worse. But before we go ahead and dive into it for today, if you would like to receive up to $200 in free stock or $200 in free cash, in a pinned comment below, I will be leaving a link to Robinhood. All you have to do is once you click on that link, is just sign up for a free account and then simply link your bank account. You do not even have to make an opening deposit. At that point in time, Robinhood will be sending you one free stock worth all the way up to $200. And if you really just have the cash, all you have to do is once you receive the free stock is just sell it for what it's worth and then transfer the cash value right back to your bank account. Okay, so diving right into it for today. So whenever Trump was running for office against Kamala Harris, and of course even before that versus Joe Biden, he promised not to make any changes to Social Security. He said hands off of Social Security. And of course, since entering office, he's doubled down and tripled down on that same exact promise, saying that he's not going to make any changes to Social Security. But in today's video, we're going to be covering why perhaps he might end up breaking that promise, and why it could actually be a good thing for some, and of course it could actually be a bad thing for others. So we're going to be diving right into this article here from MSNBC. They say that Congress is now fully engaged in the budget reconciliation process, which could include changes to entitlement spending, including Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. Congressional Republicans know the dangers here. Recent polling confirms that cutting Medicaid is unpopular, and fears over the fate of Social Security remain high. So of course, anytime you make cuts to these programs, whether it be Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid, this is going to be deeply unpopular within the American people. Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid are programs that are very popular both among Republicans as well as Democrats. It's going to be very hard to strip away make cuts to these programs. Now, of course, the bad thing is the insolvency issue. So like within Social Security, if they don't do anything within Social Security to increase its revenues, aka increase taxes among people currently working, or increase taxes among people who are receiving Social Security benefits, or a combination of the two, or they cut benefits, and unfortunately there's going to be an automatic benefit cut that will be taking place anywhere between 2032 through 2035. And of course, the sooner they act, the less drastic cuts that they will need to make. Now, the article here goes on to say that Trump said that as recently as this week that neither Social Security nor Medicaid would be cut in the House budget bill. Meanwhile, Senator Lindsey Graham told reporters on Wednesday that Republicans might be targeting work requirements for Medicaid eligibility. He said we will have to wait and see what suggestions come out of the committee meeting next week, but I'm not optimistic. Now, Social Security has not really had any type of huge changes or reform take place since the 1980s, when under President Ronald Reagan at the time, they were actually under a very similar situation as of today, where they actually had just, several months left. And if they were not able to complete any type of reform to bring more revenue or increase taxes into the trust fund, or to cut benefits across the board for everyone, there would, guess what, be automatic benefit cuts across the board, just like there will be anywhere between 2032 through 2034. So sure, President Donald Trump could go ahead and continue to just ignore this issue. He would exit office in 2028 and leave it up to the next president, who would be exiting in 2032. And it may not even be up to them at that point in time. They might even be able to exit office and still have the trust fund with like right around 1 to 2 years left, and let it be the next president's problem, whether it's them if they win their re-election, or perhaps someone else. But as we can see here, they go on to mention here that Alan Greenspan led the last successful effort to reform Social Security in 1983. Once again, this was over 40 years ago, with the support of President Ronald Reagan in a Congress led by Democratic Speaker Tip O'Neill. And in 2005, President George W. Bush attempted to reform Social Security but faced fierce opposition. The centerpiece of his proposal was voluntary personal retirement accounts, which would have moved many Social Security beneficiaries away from the pay-as-you-go defined benefit model to a partial defined contribution model. So a lot of Americans were against that because they heard the whole privatization thing, and people are, for the most part, very against privatization of Social Security. And of course, the last serious effort to reform Social Security and other entitlement programs occurred back in 2010 during the Obama administration. And when I was serving in the White House, Obama's Simpson-Bowles Commission suggested raising the cap on wages subject to the Social Security payroll FICA tax. It also recommended progressive indexing for the cost of living adjustment for Social Security beneficiaries. And I believe that these two reforms would have contributed significantly to the sustainability of Social Security. But of course, Congress rejected the Simpson-Bowles report. So that is one of the big, reasons out there or ways to reform Social Security to make the trust fund more sustainable for a longer period of time, is to raise the cap on the amount of taxes on the amount of income that is being taxed. Right now, you're only paying taxes on the first $180,000 or so that you earn. We have several proposals out there that would lift that cap for people earning above $250,000 per year or over $400,000 per year, because right now, if you earn $180,000 per year, you're paying the same exact amount of tax into the Social Security Trust Fund as someone who is earning, let's say, like $10 million per year. So a lot of people think that's incredibly unfair. Now, of course, they go on here to say that with the federal debt clocking in at $36 trillion, the day is coming when lawmakers will be compelled to act, possibly forced by some external crisis like severe turbulence in the bond market. To save Social Security, Democrats will need to recognize changes to benefits must be on the table for consideration, perhaps like raising the full retirement age. And Republicans, at the same time, will need to be open to new revenues, aka raising taxes. And of course, doing nothing is not an option and will in fact lead to a massive benefit cut should Social Security go insolvent. Now, they mentioned there earlier on in that article that the last Social Security reform effort was back in 2010 during Obama. But of course, I think they already forgot about the most recent one even after that. It started last year. There was like a reform kind of gang that started, Democrats and Republicans working together. We had Angus King, who is an independent, but of course works more closely with Democrats. He's more aligned with the left. And then on the right, we had Bill Cassidy, a Republican in Louisiana. So we had Democrats and Republicans, a small group working together, and they came up with this idea. It has since lost a little bit of momentum, but I think they could, if they got back together in this year in 2025, they could come up with a plan and perhaps pass something through Congress. But we will have to wait and see. Of course, as far as their plan goes, according to Semaphore, they said that a bipartisan group led by Senators Angus King and Bill Cassidy is considering gradually raising the retirement age to 70 as part of their legislation to overhaul Social Security. Semaphore has learned from two people briefed on their efforts, and other options on the table include changing the existing formula that calculates monthly benefits from one based on a worker's average earnings over 35 years to a different formula that's based instead on the number of years spent working and paying into Social Security. And the plan also includes a proposed sovereign wealth fund, as previously reported by Semaphore, that could be seeded with $1.5 trillion or more in borrowed money to jumpstart stock investments. The people said if it fails to generate an 8% return, both the maximum taxable income and the payroll tax rate would be increased to ensure that Social Security stays on track to be solvent for another 75 years. So that would be the big idea there. They would take $1.5 trillion in borrowed funds, and they would let that money grow in the stock market, real estate, things like that. And if they did not achieve an 8% return within that in the stock market, then in return, they would end up raising taxes. So either way, the trust fund would be solvent for a longer period of time. But with that said, leave your thoughts and comments below. What do you think about this plan? Do you think that Republicans and Democrats are capable of working together to sustain Social Security for the long haul? Leave your thoughts and comments below. But that's all we have for today's video, and I will see you in the next one.